Hello, everyone. Just joining today on the topic of aluminum and smog and where is this coming from? I'm in a good place to test these things because I'm in Los Angeles, the smog capital of America, and I've been trying to figure some things out because I know that in the summer months, I'm new here, so I'm just figuring some things out, but I know that in the summer months it's worse. The dry air and the heat and stagnation, temperature changes create a stagnation, and then you have, of course, the mountains and the valleys, so you get things that get stuck, the inversion layer. There's all these very interesting things about LA that keep it from being able to detoxify, and that's why the Indians, even in former times, knew they called it the Valley of Smoke because it would just collect everything. So it may not be a healthy place to live to some degree in general, but I think there may be also some things which are also added to that mix, which make it much worse, even when there is no technical traffic or whatever. I know cars, of course, do make it worse, but not for the same reasons as everybody would like to think. I think of it as the cars make it worse because the cars are made of aluminum in a lot of their parts, even the cylinder blocks, the pistons, all being made with aluminum now, the chassis, catalytic converters, pipes, and so many parts are now made with aluminum, and aluminum is very volatile at high temperatures. So that's just the car. So I'm not attacking petrochemical gases yet, although they have a role to play too. But so this is kind of the unseen part of the smog. This is something the Green Movement totally looked right over somehow, interestingly. Even with the high-level smog controls that we have in California, where car makers are forced to use certain types of catalytic converters, certain types of rules and regulations about the engine and about oxygen and fuel intake and all these things. So, So that is just a different view on what the cars are doing, but without attacking just the standard, okay, we just need a green movement, because that's not it. Obviously, the green movement is completely over not seeing this. And some of the green movement has been funded by, this rise in aluminum parts, because the reason that people are all going aluminum is, of course, to make the car lighter. And so that's going to contribute to, the lighter car is less gas mileage, or more miles per gallon. So then therefore you get a better distance for the car. And so you're overcoming the difficulties of the increasing pressure to come down on CO2, to come down on with all these ecological kind of green laws, which push the car makers into finding new ways to overcome that through making the car lighter. But then they end up getting in more trouble through the aluminum, steel, and what that does to the environment. Now, I was looking up an article because I couldn't find any truth on this by going through studies and stuff. Some of the studies I couldn't find what I was looking for. So I did find an interesting study on welding and different types of welding, metal, inert gas welding, MIG welding, and they were talking about aluminum welding and what happens to the material and the dangers, like work hazards and stuff. Sometimes you can find good information through this channel. So I started looking into it, and I saw that, because one of the things we always say about the pollution, and they love to say, I guess, is it's ozone. It's ozone, and it's caused when, the carbon dioxide and the holes in the ozone atmosphere and all of this kind of stuff is creating, ozone is coming down lower and lower. But that's kind of at a very junior high level of this argument, which most people are not at that level. But even at that base level, there's still people buying into that part of it. But so as we know, the low level ozone is not coming from up on high, where ozone is healthy and keeping us from, radio, ultraviolet radiation and things like that, is protecting that atmosphere. So this low level ozone is coming through. It's created. It's created through the the ultraviolet radiation in contact with oxygen, and attaching itself to hydrocarbons or VOCs, which volatile organic compounds, to create smog, photochemical smog. And so we say a lot of that smog is ozone, and there's truth to that, but when we talk about ozone, we just get lost in the ozone part of it. And we don't think, well, wait a minute, what is this ozone really? Why is this ozone here? And so this ozone, in my opinion, is coming from many different things. But I just give you one piece that feels the most central, maybe, or at least parallel with something central. It has, it's a big piece of the puzzle, and that would be how the aluminum oxides, which do become attached to hydrocarbons, and these do create these little metallic platelets that are floating in the air and reflecting back the ultraviolet light and reflecting it off into many areas, and this is creating even more ozone. So this whole kind of contamination is coming through the aluminum oxide in the air. And the aluminum oxide and ozone both are created, according to MIG welders and their health safety guidelines, are created during the process of welding. So during the process of welding, the aluminum material, the ozone, not only are the particulates created, and the aluminum oxide and things which become highly volatile, but also the ozone is created in that same moment. But the ozone can spread, and it can be even far away from the site of the welding, meaning, I don't mean the site, I mean like the exact place where you are welding. This is going to spread and go beyond that circumference there where you are, just where you're standing. And so going beyond the distance of, for example, the particulates and other things. So these two things are created in conjunction with each other through MIG welding. And so this shows that not only does incineration, now incineration, you could say, oh, the LA, and they killed all the garbage incinerators. They took them all out for eco laws and stuff, so this doesn't work. But so why are you saying incinerators? But they didn't take away all of the metal incinerators and smelting operations. No, they didn't remove those. They removed all of the trash, and where there was a way to get some sort of energy locally from that, that was pumped back into the city. I remember where I used to live in the south, near Paris in France. There was they said up to 20 to 30% of the city's heating of this small city called Vitry was provided by that incineration of the garbage or whatever. So there was this white cloud of smoke up there every once in a while. And so I'm not saying it's amazing or good or bad or whatever, but it probably is much less toxic than what they're doing with the aluminum. So so those incinerators are still going. So I imagine with all the incinerators, not only in the cars, okay, we talked about the cars, that can be a source, okay, but then also the incinerators can also be a source. Diesel also, because of what they've done to diesel, they've done so many things to the diesel to kind of change its properties. I think there's a solution, I forget the name of the product, but they say it uses urea, so it's like a natural product that's added to the fuel injection or the exhaust, to where it allows for this to, it allows for it to not get so hot because they run so cool. And so, hold on, let me see. The chemical is run through. I'd have to look up this thing again because I'd already researched it one time and now I'm forgetting. But I remember what the key element was in this uric acid was that the selling point on it was that it was just urea and water or something. But then as you got deeper and deeper into the product, you found out that the urea was not simple, that this was some sort of ammonia base that was being titled as urea, but it was like an industrially produced urea ammonium base. And the ammonium base, once again, is going to degrade the aluminum in the chassis, in the exhaust, and in the fuel injector and everything else. And then this is going to bring that out into the air once again. So creating aluminum oxides and everything else. So with pressure and heat and all of that. So I did find where I was at on it. I just, it took me a second because I couldn't, it had been a while since I'd looked that up. So, because I talked to some truckers at a certain point and asked them what they thought about this stuff. I forget the name of the product. I mean, truckers are, diesel trucks are obliged to put this product in their diesel trucks. Even if you rent like a diesel truck from like you're moving or something and you rent, you have to put this stuff in there too. And I can't think of the name of it, but so it's at it's at certain gas stations. So this stuff that they're adding to this is actually contributing once again to this unseen pollution, which is destroying lungs, health, thyroid. I mean, you name it, Alzheimer. I mean, everything can be attached to aluminum, from the vaccines all the way through cars and air and water, and so that's not the only thing. Of course, the smog is also created through photochemical synthesis of nitrogen and different types of pesticides and fertilizers and all these things which are used, which move up into the air and then are also brushed aside through this kind of combination with carbons and hydrocarbons. And so you also have this being a part of the smog too, along with many other factors. So this idea that the only way to kind of that I was able to figure this out was through this welding site, and so if you think about all the aluminum smelter operations, there's probably one in every city, all these small cities everywhere, and maybe two, and definitely in a big city there's many, and then you have the incinerators, you have industrial production and factories and manufacturing and different places where they're converting petrochemicals into different what would you call that, derivatives to be used in the petrochemical industry. So they start somewhere, then they break it down into all these different compositions to be used for everything from cosmetics down to structure to plastics to everything else. So, and these usually gas off a gas called cyanide, HEN, I think it's called, and it's a cyanide particle which does release some cyanide gas, but that's only kind of locally. But then the cyanide joins with aluminum or other particles, calcium, different things in the air. And then that creates, once again, these little smog particles and particulates that we breathe in. So you have like a perfect storm here for turning up what then 5G, if you had 5G and the danger that causes to people and their lungs and the oxygen in the air, and what the 5G frequency does to oxygen in the air. But then you add to that all of this hypoxia that's produced by the particulates and the aluminum and all these things in the air, you start to have a much weaker lung function in general. Now, unless you have IQ air purifiers, you won't be able to get outside of this reality, and even a monitor and everything else, and you have to kind of play with it. I do here because I know that it's dangerous, and especially in certain months, to not only to do it for when you sleep, which is essential all year round, but even during the day at work and everything else, if you work from home, for example. And then there's portable units. There's different ways of doing it. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there because I think it's important that they don't tell you that this aluminum smelting. I mean, you could think, well, through that, okay, so it could be collective greed. It could be collective saving money and using aluminum, steel. And, you could say, well, it's more expensive. But there's a price advantage to these cars because of they're lighter, there's less gas mileage, there's less pressure from these industries to stop all these carbon emissions, etc. So they are moving in this direction, but it may not be the right direction. It's almost like moving away from uh, um, gas for some sort of nuclear, what would you call it? Some sort of green windmill-based gas or windmill, that doesn't exist, but I'm saying some sort of windmill-based energy over the energy that we may have locally available in abundance. It's almost like what do you call it? Like a Mephistophelian trap, to go on aesthetics with everything and go, well, this kind of car looks like a nicer type of car and breathes like a nicer type of car, so therefore, but then you shoot yourself in the foot because you may have a much more local ability with your own resources to do something which gives a much greater industry to the world, and not like just a negative industry, but also like commerce and capitalism and the ability to have energy for industrial needs. Otherwise, China can just come over here and take us over if we third world our energy needs down to wind power, with the expensive nature of wind power. Like, it's impossible. So you have to stay, when there's a lot of forces opposed to you, like there is in any, wherever the power is concentrated, you're always going to have forces opposing that place. When it was France under Napoleon, when it was Germany under Hitler, wherever this power rises up, there's forces everywhere. And so those forces would love to see America third world its energy and then just take that over. So all of these things have to be understood. We can't be Philistine, or even worse than that, I guess, junior high or elementary school or something about it, and just try to wish it all away with some sort of green energy laws. So this is just my podcast on trying to help people figure out what's actually in the air and what's actually causing the damage and how it could be increased in their area. For example, here in LA, I've noticed a huge increase lately. Are they trying to increase the coronavirus cases through the hypoxia caused, which lowers lung condition? Are they building 5G towers around different types of nursing homes and other areas where they can ensure such hypoxia through multiple means? I don't know. I'm just postulating possibilities, but what I have noticed is that right now, in the last few days, I've never seen my meter be so high. I've had to keep my IQ air filtration on 4 or 5 sometimes, just to get the particulates back down to 4.0, to where I can know that there's nothing in the air. And that wasn't like that before. So things are getting worse, and so it could be summer. It could be, people say cars coming back, and there's a lot of people that, so I could be completely just, I hope they're right. But it could also be an increase in the smelting operations, and an increase in local proliferation of this aluminum into the air. This can be done, and it could be controlled quite easily, especially during these periods. The production can increase, and there can be ways to well, of course, people are always using aluminum anyway, right? So there's always a market for it. But having these things increase at given periods and then just stay increased is also possible, and also contaminates the air on top of everything else. So if you're trying to figure out how it's possible to do these things at a big level, not just chemtrails and planes flying over, but even locally, these things can be turned up and not be noticed. And you could say, well, wouldn't the incinerator have an obligation to limit the aluminum particles being able to go out into the environment? Yes, there would be some controls on that. Those controls may also be lifted during a national emergency, to build for infrastructure, for things that need, that's very easy. They already passed a law. They already were allowing food producers to switch out ingredients because certain ingredients may not be available during this period because of shipping and different things. So they said, well, you can switch out canola oil or sunflower oil or whatever for soy oil, and you don't have to label it because that will come back on. This is in a tight period where you can do this without having to change your whole production. You got like a candy bar out there, and it's going to be out there for 6 months before, while these changes are happening, you're not going to have time to change the writing on the package anyway. So that's their argument, and so knowing what they can do during these type of crisis, you shouldn't put it past them that it's possible to lower those standards or suspend them in order for the greater good of building these 5G towers or the infrastructure project or whatever it is, however they've packaged it and sold it, and security measures or whatever it is. So I think that that's what's happening now. I can't be sure, and I'm open to the fact that it's not it, and I hope it's not, because I would like to have a more secure life here, but otherwise I'll have to start thinking about leaving. But just so you know, there is a way that it can be done, and that's what I'm here to expose to you. So anyway, one of the most important products for aluminum in the world is magnesium. High magnesium levels in the body. This is a full disclosure because this is what we sell at our website, but it is important, so I do say it. And we do have studies on the site about aluminum absorption, aluminum detoxification through the hair, and I think they took urine and hair samples. And so the aluminum detoxifies once we start this process of 12 weeks on the transdermal magnesium, if it's a high quality, and glass bottles, which is what we have. There's a lot of fake Zechstein stuff out there. We have the real thing. Most brands dilute, they chemically treat, they solvent extract, or they use cheap plastic, inexpensive plastics, and we do not. So we're the real thing, coming from the original city, Vindam, Holland, where this natural salt pillow formation called the Zechstein actually is. It can't be recreated elsewhere, although in Asia they do try to sell Zechstein products to America, pretending that they come from the Zechstein, when in truth they just use the geological era of time called Zechstein and Permian to hide the true origins, which are from Tibetan mining operations and exploitation. So get the right stuff and start detoxifying this stuff from your body. Start with the head. You can put it on the head and let it come through. It'll help to detoxify the aluminum out of the system, but you need to do it for 3 to 6 months every day. And you'll feel it doing other things on the body. And high magnesium levels are pretty much correlated with health. There's hundreds of studies showing that cancer and inflammation and all these other things are low magnesium realities and are always bettered by magnesium, high magnesium levels, intracellular levels. So now you have the wisdom to move forward and start there. Start with magnesium and work your way on down to the other deficiencies. This is explained in other podcasts called The Threefold Remedy. Come check us out at theheartoftradition.com.